When we're looking to buy a watch, we really focus on the positive, all the great things that we're going to do with the watch on our wrist. The excitement of waiting for it to come in the mail or potentially going into the store and getting it. But we don't really think about maybe all of the potential downsides or just the things that maybe consider the mistakes that are made in the buying process. So what I wanted to do in this video is look at 9 things that I would recommend, or just mistakes that I see people making when it comes to purchasing luxury watches. Now, this is going to be geared more towards the higher end of watchmaking, but I will say that probably can apply to any segment of the watch collecting or watch buying world. Of course, some of this is just my own personal opinion, but if you have other mistakes that you've made in the past that you think people should be aware of, please leave a comment down below. And also, if you've not subscribed to our newsletter yet, be sure to do so. We have some great written content. It's being written on a weekly basis, sent to you, looking at the backstory of tritium watches as an example, watch movements and everything you need to know, looking at different industry breakdowns of 52 watch brands that you should be aware of, understanding their ownership structure, and also looking at some additional fun facts that you should know about each of those brands. All of that and a lot more. Definitely check it out. Subscribe to the newsletter so you can stay in the loop. Totally different than the content that we're creating here on the YouTube one. Buying the alternative channel. So now for this first one here, we have buying the alternative when the real thing is in reach, or just finding an alternative watch that isn't exactly what you want specifically. Now, I do think there are watches out there that are so out of this world in terms of their pricing that not everybody can pull that off, and you can't responsibly do it if that's the case. Totally understand. I think going for an alternative is a fine thing to do, but where I think this gets troubling is when you're talking about something maybe being in reach and you're giving into this idea of instant gratification. You just want to get something on your wrist. It's a little bit more attainable, or maybe doesn't have the same level of pedigree associated compared to something else, and you just decide to go for the lesser of the two watches just because it allows you to get into that watch sooner. I always find people regret this decision. It never fully gives them the fulfillment that they want. It scratched the itch for a short period. But when you're talking about the long-term game of watchmaking, this is not something you want to go and just make quick impulsive buys, go for the real thing. If you want a Speedmaster, go for a Speedmaster. There's nothing underneath it that's going to scratch that itch for you. The same can be said about a Rolex and any of these other watches that are out there. Be responsible in your decision making, but definitely hold out for the watch you truly want, because once you get it, the satisfaction will be amazing for mistake 2. Not buying the watch on the bracelet number 2. We have not buying the watch on the bracelet just to save some extra money. Now, in the long term, I have found that this does not actually take place. You end up spending more money if you want to get into the bracelet after the fact, because many of these brands in the luxury segment don't actually list out their bracelets as a specific line item or SKU on their website you can just buy. Instead, it's usually you have to have a specific request, you have to wait a long time, and usually you end up spending more. The other reason why I'd like going for the bracelet, if you are kind of on the fence, is it does give you more flexibility if you ever decided to move on from the watch. People tend to spend a bit more money for the bracelet version because of all these hoops that people tend to have to jump through. So I think it is a better thing to go for. It's much harder to find the factory bracelet than it is just to pair any strap that's just going to look the part on a watch. Now 3. Consider pre-owned for point 3, just going to say consider pre-owned for specific models. Now, in the past 5 or so years, the whole space of pre-owned has gone nuts with certain watches and certain brands. So this might just be off the table for many, but as always, there's going to be great buys in the pre-owned space for certain models. If you don't mind having something that maybe isn't going to be of the same value. What I would always recommend whenever you're buying, of course, buy the seller. Think about other additional things as well. What is the warranty window? Does it come with box and papers? Do I still have some coverage when I buy that watch? Can I? Always make sure I'm legitimizing it being a true watch that is going to be authentic. That is always, of course, important. I think having those box and papers does help with this. And of course, buying it from the seller is going to be one of the better things that you're going to be able to do. But I will also say a couple other things when buying pre-owned that I would recommend. One is there's going to be a return where, say, if you are foregoing a certain standard of condition and also are dealing with no boxes and papers, spending more money to get the peace of mind and the experience of buying new, I think it does come into play, and you probably want to go that route. There are sometimes, what I've always noticed is when I go for a model that's not in the best condition, you always want to go for a model that's in good condition, pay a little bit more, make sure you have some increased flexibility with maybe some warranty coverage if it is a pre-owned watch. If it's vintage, that's a totally different animal. I would just try to maximize buying the seller, making sure it's in good condition. Condition is going to be everything in that circumstance. Just be able to make that decision for yourself on where you find the most value. I'm just a huge proponent of just trying to find the best example. Paying a bit more to get a better example is going to always be better in the long run. And also, as you start to pay more for a contemporary watch, maybe it's pre-owned and it's starting to get closer to retail, I think you end up going for retail prices, at least on watches, that of course are going to be trading below list value. I find this is especially true when you're dealing with more affordable watches at times, because there's a lot of people that have unrealistic expectations about how much their watch is worth. They have all these scratches, no longer have a warranty, and at that point you're better off let's just go for the whole thing. Talking about a few hundred here, let's just go for buying the new watch. So you just have to go case by case. But pre-owned is a great opportunity for many watches out there, and definitely something to look into. The only other thing I will say is double check. Make sure you're getting a good price. There are great tools out there like Watch Recon that will have independent sales of different dealers out there and private sellers, so that you can go ahead and double check on what were the listed or sold watches at that specific reference now for R4. Unrealistic views on value. Next mistake here, we have misconceptions on value retention and thinking every watch has this crazy upside with investment potential. I have a whole video on investment watches talking about the good, bad, and ugly of that whole category. Of course, you can make some money with watches. You can retain value in watches for certain brands, but 98 to 99% of brands are not going to sell watches that are going to go up on the secondary market. And if they do, you are going to have to jump through hoops. You're going to have to be a bit more savvy as a buyer to go ahead and get that. Typically, you're going to also have a long list of other transactions with a retailer in order for you to even get opportunities at those most coveted pieces. This is mostly, of course, talking about these upper echelon brands that are usually independent or don't have any public ownership, so that they can control the supply a bit more to a tight degree. Rolex, AP, PEC as examples. And I mentioned this in the last point too. Just also when people are selling things, they just somehow think that they're going to get more money from it. You should always just look at what things are selling for when you buy a watch. Make sure you're getting a good deal if you're going for the pre-owned route. Also, maybe just see what value retention you're talking about if you take that investment mindset. I also find that people are just afraid to wear the freaking things too. Next mistake here is 5, buying impulsively and not researching thoroughly. Now, we've all been there. We've purchased a watch, maybe when we jumped the gun a tad and just were really excited about it. We bought it, and then we find that we regretted it in the long term. I think it's always better just to sleep on your decisions. Definitely see if lust turns into love is something I would always say. Make sure you actually can't quit this watch. You may be waking up in the middle of night. I have woken up in the middle of night thinking about a watch before I am a sick individual. So think about that. You just have to let the watch, rest in your brain for a bit. Make sure that you truly love this watch before going for it. Don't be acting just like, hey, I just found out about this watch today. let's buy it, take some time, think about it, and whether or not it's not the right to decision for you. Of course, also when you're talking about research, that's another animal. I think people, you hear this term all the time, do your research. But what does that actually mean for me? What I always think of is not just understanding the model itself, because I think many people understand that. But what I've always noticed too is like understanding the history of that model family. If I want to get into a specific Rolex Explorer, I want to look at all the different Rolex Explorer references from the past. Why were they created? What are the differences between them? What's a Mark II dial? What does that even mean? So understanding those different things you learn in the process, like, oh wait, maybe this isn't exactly what I want. There's another example that I've come into contact with, like the long G Conquest 39mm. There are differences between the blue dial and the black dial version. One has lume, one doesn't have lume, and that's something that you wouldn't know until you start to look into the details and understand the entire model family. If you look at these models as just individual creations and don't understand the big picture, sometimes you find that there's gaps in your ability to know. So you want to find those gaps, try to expand beyond maybe just that one model to know what really you have in front of you. Other things that I would recommend when it comes to research. This can also go into talking to individual buyers. If you see somebody online on Instagram, just look up a hashtag of a specific watcher looking to buy, find somebody that owns that watch, and maybe DM them and ask them, hey, what do you think of the watch? Get their ownership opinion about what they think of it. And then another thing you can do is maybe find some other people on the internet or on Instagram who have similar R size to you that also maybe own watches that you might want, and just ask them, hey, and look just how it wears on the wrist. Try to stockpile people. That could almost be wrists, Sia's buddies that you can just take a look at to see how different watches might wear. So you have a better understanding when you're looking to purchase that watch, and it allows you to have a better opinion as well now. 4.6, creating an economic burden with a watch. 0.6, putting an economic burden on yourself just by buying watch. Now, I think this is one that, unfortunately, of course, I'm not a financial advisor by any means. People can do with their money how they please, but I just don't think that you want to stress yourself out over buying a watch. That is the most silly thing to me. And I say that as somebody who has done that in the past. Like, I remember buying watches rather irresponsibly when maybe I shouldn't have purchased the watch. So I think you shouldn't feel purchasing the watch. I believe that it shouldn't affect your day-to-day lifestyle if you're going to enjoy, because you're not going to enjoy the watch. It just comes down to that. If you're stressed every single time you look down at this, you have buyer remorse, like you don't want that. You don't want money to be a concern for you when you're enjoying your new watch. You just want to be able to live with that watch. I want to also, I always think about this, like I buy this watch, I want to think about all the things I can do with that watch, a watch. An item should not inhibit experience. And that is one thing I think some people get caught up with. They have all these things, and then here they are just locked in the room at night, can't go anywhere, can't do anything with it because they spent all their money on a watch. And then sadly, I think many of us have been there, and also saving up for the watch. Respond Ibly is always worth it. You'll end up enjoying the watch much more every single time that I have purchased a watch when I have had to suffer. Slightly in saving, not in purchasing, but saving, let the time of saving to responsibly be where you're going to feel the pain on the front end before you make the decision, rather than buying and then having all this remorse after 7. Buying an iconic watch simply because it's iconic, because you jumped the gun too quickly. Our next mistake here is buying an iconic watch just because it's an icon. So we hear about the same watches over and over again in watchmaking. We put many watches on a pedestal that were trailblazers and setting a tone for the category, and oftentimes that sometimes can cloud our judgment on what is the right watch for us, especially when you're dealing with your first luxury watch purchase. I don't believe there's any prerequisite for watch enthusiasm or collecting. There's no watch that you can just buy and say, I'm a collector now. That's not how you judge this thing at the end of the day. There's no watch that you can purchase, say, hey, I belong now. Check out what I have some collectors have that I think mentality, and I don't think that's right. It doesn't matter what you own. It doesn't matter if it's a watch that everybody can recognize. I don't think that's what this is about. A safe choice is not safe if you don't like it. At the end of the day, people get this mentality of, oh, this is an accepted watch, but if you don't like it, who cares? That's not a safe choice. That's a dumb choice. So I do think people need to think from that context of this is about individual expression. This is about what makes, I think why I decide to wear watches a lot of times is what can make me look, what can make me unique? What do I like? I don't care what anybody else thinks. I just want to wear something that I enjoy and what I feel good with when I have it on the wrist. And that's really all that matters. Also, one thing that always annoys me is, and no offense anybody to ask these questions because I know you're trying to get help, but like questions about like, hey, I'm trying to get like a Submariner or Speedmaster, which one should I go for? There are objective realities to watches and which watch is better than another, but it gets to a point once you're dealing with a quality watch, you have a specific budget. All of that doesn't matter. No one's going to be able to make that decision for you. You just have to go with what you like. And if you don't like it, that is going to eliminate everything from the equation. If you like the watch, that's what matters the most. Not an icon, not any other sense of, belonging, or just thinking of like the safe choice. 8. Falling for hype. Our 8th mistake here is falling for the hype and the trends. So we've seen it over and over again. There's these watches that get so hyped up. You see maybe some premiums on the secondary market. The flippers are having a field day. People get caught up in the hype and they just want to follow the pack in. That way, this kind of goes along with the last point, just going for the stuff that you ultimately like. Trends fade, hype fades. All of that is going to be finite. What isn't is going to be your enthusiasm for this. If you have the right thought process around why you collect. I also think a big aspect of this as well is thinking that your hype piece is going to impress other people. Sure, it might, maybe some circles, but any person that's impressed with the watch that I have on my wrist, I don't probably want to be friends with them, to be honest with you, unless they're a watch enthusiast, of course. But even then, like, I don't like the show-off mentality. I think a lot of people don't necessarily like that, but we're people that like kind of to show things off conspicuously at times. So I get why certain people will fall into this, but typically no one cares. No one's going to acknowledge your watch unless you're really obnoxious about it. You're ending up paying more. Typically, when you lean into the hype in these types of pieces, and you also just miss out on some fantastic brands. A lot of brands that are not hyped, I think, provide some of the most refreshing takes. And I always get excited when I see something on somebody's wrist that's just so unique. And even if it's not for me, and that's a big point of this channel that I've really evolved to, is it's not about whether or not I would wear it, but it's also finding watches that I can just appreciate for what they are. Even if I can't wear them, they're not my style. When there are points of individual expression taking place, that's what allows the art form of watchmaking to move forward. So that's where we need to applaud things. And I think with your buying habits, if you can administer that same thing for yourself while being authentic to who you are, that's a great place to be. And now for 9. But when will I even wear it? Our last mistake here we have, not considering when and if you're going to actually wear the watch you're looking to buy. One thing people get caught up with is just seeing a watch as an independent object and not thinking about how that object can take place in their actual life. One thing I've noticed for myself is there's watches that I enjoy, but then I look at myself and I'm like, wait, I probably can't pull that one off. Say you're somebody that doesn't have to dress up, and maybe you dress up in a suit maybe twice a year. Does getting a reversal really make that much sense? When you're wearing casual attire all the time, maybe you love the Omega PLPR, but you're finding yourself wearing a suit more often than not, and you have a small wrist. You got to be honest with these things and be able to look at your life and make a decision based on that. Also, you have to look at what you currently have. If you have other watches that check off the box, then does it make sense to buy another watch that maybe falls in the same category? Say you have a blue dive watch. Do you need another blue dive watch in a different variation that probably has a lot of overlap in every single time that you're thinking about, hey, I feel like, blue would look great with my outfit today. I feel like I want to wear this. you're looking at two different watches. You just have to make that decision for yourself where you are going to set up your philosophy as a collector. The other point that I'll add here, there's a lot of people out there that will go ahead and buy something and then not even wear the thing. They'll just store it in like a safety deposit box, which I don't think is great either, because then you have this hoarding mentality. You're not enjoying the watches. Maybe you're even afraid to wear them, which is a huge reality for many people out there. So consider all of this. Will you actually wear the watch? Because if you're not wearing the watch, then why the hell are you even buying it? But all right, guys, those are my 9 mistakes when it comes to luxury watch buying. Do you have any other takes that were maybe forgotten or overlooked? These are just some that come to mind immediately for me that I wanted to go through here today. If you found this video helpful, you like these style of videos, definitely give it a thumbs up. Really would appreciate that. Of course, subscribe and hit the bell icon if you want to stay up to date with the content. Other great places to stay up to date with content is going to be the newsletter, which I mentioned at the beginning, and then also checking out our Instagram where you can see some great photos of watches in the process. Definitely check out teddybaldisstar.com, full authorized dealer of 30 brands, quick and fast fulfillment, dedicated customer support, and a full factory warranty for all the new products that we offer. But guys, thank you again so much for watching. Be well, and I will see you all very soon.